Peru, home of the world's longest mountain range, the Andes, the spine of South America. Here, in a high river valley, among peaks towering over 20,000 feet, the Inca established their capital city of Cusco, which thrived for over 300 years, until Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century. Above Cusco, at an elevation of more than 12,000 feet, looms the ancient fortress of Sacsayhuaman, whose immense stone walls may hold secrets which predate the Inca themselves.
My feeling, very strong feeling, is that we're looking at a two-phase construction site in many of the so-called Inca stone monuments, and that the Inca structures sit on top of much more ancient rock-cut structures and megalithic structures that we just don't know who built them. And this actually fits with the Inca's own view.
Like many Inca sites, Sacsayhuaman features astonishing stonework, but not all of it credited to the Inca. According to conventional archaeology, the Quilque culture built the older sections of the site approximately 1,000 years ago. But the Inca themselves believed the site was constructed by an earlier unnamed race of people, led by a powerful god who descended from the skies.
Throughout time, there has been witness to a god named Viracocha that visited the South American people and blessed them and gave them all types of technology. And some of his physical characteristics make him stand out from the indigenous population because he was a very tall, pale-skinned, white-haired being.
But did this god Viracocha actually exist? Could he have been, as ancient astronaut theorists suggest, a visitor from an alien world? If so, it might help to explain just how the ancient site was constructed.
This rock weighs about 20 tons. This is minuscule compared to many of the rocks at Sacsayhuaman. Today we have heavy machinery to move such stones, but in the ancient times, especially the Inca, they would have used massive human workforces working for massive amounts of time. A rule of thumb is it takes about 10 to 20 men to move a 1-ton rock. So when you're talking hundreds of tons, you're talking thousands of men.
What we see is a culture who have got the technology to quarry giant blocks of stone, move them to the site where they want to build, and then to stack and cut and articulate these massive blocks into, in some cases, almost indestructible structure.
Talk about granite, you're talking about a composition of feldspar, mica, and quartz. So you need diamond to actually braid it or cut it. We would use diamond today to cut granite. Those are the kind of discoveries that lead one to question whether they were really using the tools in the ancient toolbox or whether there was something else at work.
Stonehenge in England, the Great Pyramid of Egypt, Teotihuacan, Mexico, and Machu Picchu, Peru. All around the world, ancient man built extraordinary structures, and all those separated by vast distances and thousands of years. Researchers believe that a secret code embedded in megalithic monuments may reveal the truth behind the connections between numerous ancient civilizations.
When you look at where the ancients built their monuments, it is clear that they were marking the places where the power of the earth could be harnessed. So the question really is, can we still maintain that all of these sites were simply chosen by accident, or is there far more to it than that? the evidence clearly suggests that these cultures were doing something on a global scale, interacting, creating a pattern which is really unique and lost to us right now.
Some researchers have discovered a strong connection between sacred structures and powerfully charged areas of the globe, where the Earth's electromagnetic energy gathers. Electromagnetic energy waves provide for all visible light and today's radio and cellular communication, as well as microwaves and X-rays.
Energy, scientifically, is a property that things have, that we say technically allows it to do work or make things move. So you think of things like magnetic fields, electric fields, gravity, things moving, heating things up. Those are all forms of energy. And the one thing we do know is the Earth has a magnetic field. And the magnetic field connects different parts on the Earth.
And these strange anomalies occur, like gravitational anomalies again, and magnetic anomalies, and even like anomalies to do with distortions of vision. And if you sort of mark them on a map where they all are, they seem to form into these geometric grids.
It seems that ancient people, possibly with the help of ancient aliens, early on mapped the entire Earth and noted these special power spots and vortex areas that occur on islands and mountain areas and jungles all around the planet. It was important to them, and these places are related by geometry and latitude and longitude.
Known as the world grid, ancient astronaut theorists believe our ancestors purposely constructed their monuments on energy lines that, when mapped and connected, create a significant pattern.
The concept of the world grid is that the Earth is like a giant crystal and energy is flowing around it, little nodules. And energy paths are intersecting and moving all over the world.
In the 4th century BC, Greek philosopher and mathematician Plato taught that the basic structure of the Earth evolved from geometric shapes now known as platonic solids.
Well, Plato left a tantalizing clue as to possibly the first mention of the world grid. He basically described the Earth as being created from 12 pentagonal faces and 20 points or vertices on the surface. And when you join these together and mark them on a map, you realize that there's kind of geometrical formations that appear between them.
Plato wrote that there was a world soul, and this world soul he described as a sphere that was composed of 120 equal, identical triangles. I believed that that model actually could be applied to the Earth.
To illustrate Plato's sphere of triangles, anthropologist Beth Hakens designed a model of the Earth, divided by 15 circles.
Well, here you can see a cluster of 10 of the triangles of the 120 that Plato mentioned. Besides seeing this as triangles, you can see it as 15 equators that actually cut the Earth in half. You can see they all go around whichever way you look. They're all great circles. It's a geometric model of the Earth energy grid of what Plato discovered 2,500 years ago.
But is it possible, as ancient astronaut theorists believe, that man was able to capture and use the Earth's energy at power centers around the world to help build their megalithic monuments?
There's fascinating ideas that they were actually using this for anti-gravitational purposes, and they were actually able to lift and quarry and move these huge megalithic blocks great distances around the planet. And so we have to question, was there something to do with this grid that they were actually harnessing, and they were able to use the energies from it to move and construct these sites?
The Siunik province, southern Armenia. Approximately 140 miles southeast of the nation's capital, Yerevan, lies the city of Sicyon. Nearby, sits a high plateau where hundreds of ancient stones, some weighing more than 50 tons, stretch over 1/3 of a mile. This is Stonehenge, also known as the Armenian Stonehenge. Estimated to be approximately 7,500 years old, Stonehenge predates the British Stonehenge by more than 4,500 years. The site is made of 203 slabs of basalt. At the structure's center stands the stone circle, or henge.
When most people hear of Stonehenges, they think of the Stonehenge in England, but there are hundreds of these henges or stone circles scattered all across Europe. What they were and how they were used is still a mystery.
Mainstream archaeology still doesn't agree on who lived there or who the builders were of that site. What we do know, though, is that the entire site is definitely a part of some type of an astronomical model.
But how could this simple circular array of stones have given early man information about the stars? Is it possible that Stonehenge might be the world's oldest observatory? In September of 2010, England's Oxford University sent an expedition to investigate.
What makes this exceptional megalithic monument unique are the small holes which have been bored into the rock at different angles. There are 85 stones with holes. They're like telescopes. What we see with these holes is that they are pointed at different alignments to positions on the horizon or into the night sky. What they're pointing at is still a mystery to us. But we can say with certainty from the archaeological evidence that they were some sort of way to connect man and his life on Earth to the heavens above. And this would be the first time that we can say that people were systematically trying to understand their place in the solar system.
This site is also called the Zoroast's Kerer, which means the stones of the powerful. And what has been determined is that the outline of these stones actually does correspond to the constellation known as Cygnus, or the Swan, which in certain cultures is also referred to as the vulture.
Cygnus has always been seen among cultures around the world for many, many thousands of years as a point of entry and exit into the sky world. This belief in a power in the stars, the idea that we come from the stars and actually return there in death.
The early Greeks, Chinese, and others also believed that Cygnus had a special power or unique significance. But why? Why would so many ancient cultures around the world have similar myths about the same constellation?
The only reason why I would do this if I were on a foreign planet is to give a message to future generations to say, hey, nudge, nudge, this is where we came from.
Although today it is no longer possible to see Cygnus through the notches of Stonehenge, many theories exist as to why the position of the constellation has changed so drastically.
This site dates back to antiquity, where the Earth's axis was in a different position, and you had the constellation visible in the sky at that time because of the fact that the Earth was on a different tilt of its axis entirely.
The methods used to build huge megalithic structures such as Pumapunku and the pyramids of Egypt remain a mystery. But what about the tools used to build them? Where are they? And might they provide a clue as to how these enormous stone structures were created?
A lot of the real ancient, mysterious work was done at a time when there was no steel. And the copper they had was, yeah, they could harden it by cold hammering it, but still wouldn't make a dent in rocks like basalt and granite. So they would have had to use, much more laborious techniques, or they had some sort of advanced technology which escapes me. And I've been in the business 40 years.
The tools and machines must have been equal to the task of actually building the pyramids, crafting those statues to such a high order of precision, crafting those boxes to a modern-day precision that we find in our inspection lab. And the big question, where are the tools?
In the late 19th century, British archaeologist Sir Flinders Petrie scoured Egypt, looking not for the biggest items, but the smallest.
Petrie was absolutely fascinated by the technical achievements of the Egyptians, particularly the early Egyptians. He constantly was looking for how they made things, how they developed things, how they continued to sort of basically perfect their tools.
We're normally taught that the ancient Egyptians had simple tools, and what Petrie brought out is information that seems to actually argue against that notion.
This is an example of a drill hole. You can see the very fine lines on it. You can see the technology that's made to use it. You can see how it's a perfect hole almost all the way through, but it tapers at one end. This is the fragment of a diorite bowl. It's one of the hardest substances, and you can see on this fragment that there's a lathe mark, which is really interesting that they managed to make such a mark in such a hard material.
Among all the tools discovered by Petrie, however, one stood out from all the rest. While working inside the Great Pyramid, Petrie stumbled across a tubular drill made of granite.
Tubular drills amongst the ancient Egyptians were actually fairly common. I mean, Petrie found quite a few of them. The interesting thing about the one that he found in Giza is that such hard stone that was so carefully curved, precisely grooved. As you can see, it's got very, very fine markings on it, basically lines, literally a couple of millimeters apart. You can see it goes all the way around, very, very accurately, hardly any waves at all. He was absolutely amazed by this. He kept returning to it throughout his life. His theory was that the Egyptians must have had access to diamonds or some kind of jewel that would have cut it. The interesting thing about Petrie's theory about how these drill lines were made was that he never discovered any diamonds in ancient Egypt. So where were they? Where did they go? We don't know.
If the ancient Egyptians didn't possess diamonds, how were the precision grooves cut onto the granite drill? Did Petrie accidentally discover a tool made by extraterrestrials? Machinist expert Chris Dunn attempted to answer this question by creating his own granite drill, using the known tools and techniques of the ancient Egyptians.
In order to test the Egyptologist theory about how the ancient Egyptians drilled into granite, I took a tube and fixed a crank on it and actually used sand and silicon carbide. And after many hours of turning and drilling into this piece of granite, finally got deep enough that I could actually pop a core out. And the reason for that was to actually look at the surface, not just of the hole, but of the core.
The next step was to use a high-tech industrial microscope to compare his drill core to a latex copy of the one at the Petrie Museum.
We have under the microscope the core that we drilled with the copper tube and sand. And as you can see, the surface of the core, the striations are not very clear. There's nothing really distinctive in terms of the feed of the tool marks using sand and copper. Now bringing the latex that they took of the core in the Petrie Museum, and we see something totally different. The striations are very clear and they're quite deep. The devil is actually in the details, and the details of this particular artifact are what I consider to be a smoking gun in terms of what level of technology we give the ancient Egyptians credit for.